Good morning, everybody. This is the regularly scheduled meeting of the Board of Fire Commissioners. Date is Tuesday, May 21st, 2019, and it's 9 a.m.
Let the record reflect Commissioners Ibada, Glazier, and Hana are present, and we have a quorum. Madam President.
Thank you. Flag salute, moment of silence.
Please rise. Place your right hand over your heart. Ready? Begin. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please join me in a moment of silence in honor of past and present members of the Los Angeles Fire Department who devote their lives to the protection of our community. Thank you. Please be seated.
So we start, as always, with Commissioner comments.
I was able to stop by to Fire Station 61 and 82 for Fire Service Day. Had a nice talk with the crews there, and Fire Service Day is always a good time.
Yeah, Fire Service Day is one of my favorite days because I get to bring my son and my granddaughter to all the fire stations. So I hit a number of them. I started with 27 and then went to 63 and then very briefly 88, and then I went down south to 64 and 65, and I finished the day at 112, and the highlight of the day was my granddaughter getting to see the fireboat.
Awesome.
And then just this past weekend, I was able to attend the Mandeville Canyon evacuation drill that Chief Hogan put together, and it was a great event in that, you know, he coordinated all of the different agencies of the city and Department of Transportation, the public information officers were all there, and then Council Member Mike Bonin showed up, and once again, it was a phenomenal event, and kudos to Chief Hogan.
Great. Awesome. Okay, moving on to reports of the Fire Chief.
Thank you, Madam President. The following are the events attended by the Fire Chief from the dates of April 2nd to May 20th, 2019. On April 3rd, the Fire Chief conducted an interview with Steve Lang of Voices America News regarding the Wi-Fi technology and brush fire readiness. On April 4th, the Fire Chief attended the retirement luncheon for arson investigator Rosa Tufts. April 17th, the Fire Chief and command staff attended Mayor Garcetti's State of the City address at Abraham Lincoln High School. On May 2nd and 3rd, the Fire Chief attended the 89th Annual Wildland Fire Training and Safety Conference in Yucaipa. On May 8th and May 9th, the Fire Chief made opening remarks at the education fair, the LAFD Education Fair at Frank Hopkins Memorial Training Center. On May 9th, the Fire Chief attended the 25th Annual Treasures of Los Angeles Luncheon at the JW Marriott in downtown. May 15th, Fire Chief attended a Brush Ops Conference in Santa Barbara. And this week, May 19th through the 22nd, the Fire Chief is attending a conference with the Fire Department of New York and Underwriters Laboratory of Firefighter Safety Research Institute in New York City, New York. And that's the end of my report.
Thank you. Following with verbal report by the department on significant incidents from April 2nd to May 20th.
Good morning, Madam President, Commissioners, Chief Mathis, Sella, Alfred Poyer, Chief Deputy Emergency Operations. I'd like to highlight two notable tragic emergency incidents in the recent past. On Wednesday, May the 15th, 2019, at 7:25 in the morning, South Bureau Resources, led by LAFD Engine 40 and RA 112, along with Los Angeles Port Police, responded to a report of an industrial accident at Pier 300, which is the APL terminal in the port. Facility security officers advised our members that a tire from a very large vehicle called a top loader blew apart, causing one death and one severe injury. Port Police units responded to both APL and Harbor UCLA for the investigation, while the LAFD Battalion 6 and Marine Battalion Chief Joe Espinosa were on scene. The Mayor's crisis response team was notified and responded. Both of the injured parties were members of the International Longshore and Warehouse Union, the ILWU. Los Angeles Fire Department RA 112 treated and transported the surviving patient to Harbor UCLA Medical Center. On Sunday, May the 19th, LAFD Valley Bureau resources responded just after 4 o'clock in the morning to a structure fire in a 2-story commercial building at 8165 North Sunland Boulevard in Sun Valley. The bulk of the fire was located on the second-floor loft area, and while conducting firefighting and search operations, our firefighters located one unconscious and unresponsive adult male near the site of the fire. He was quickly pulled from the building by firefighters and was promptly treated by our paramedics. But sadly, he passed away as a result of his injuries. This was our 6th related fire fatality this year. In the 7-week period beginning April 2nd, 2019 through today, we had a total of 65,241 emergency dispatches for an average of 1,331 a day, and we transported 28,373 patients to local hospitals for an average of 579 a day. If you don't have any questions, that will conclude my verbal report.
No, thank you.
Thank you.
So moving on to verbal report by the medical director for the same time period.
Good morning, everyone. Dr. Mark Eckstein, Medical Director, EMS Bureau Commander. Significant EMS incidents since the last meeting. I'll try to be a little more upbeat following Chief Poyer's presentation. 3 notable saves, all in Valley Bureau, as it turns out. On May the 7th, a 54-year-old gentleman actually was at a funeral, and we know there's actually medical conditions. We know stress can cause sudden cardiac arrest. That's what happened to this gentleman, and due to the efforts of outstanding work of our dispatcher who handled the call, along with the response of Engine and Rescue 89, providing both dispatcher-assisted CPR instructions, basic and advanced life support. Return to spontaneous circulation was achieved, and the patient was transported to the nearest STEMI Center for interventional cardiology. On May the 19th, Engine 81 Rescue 39 responded to a Target department store, also demonstrating the impact of robust chain of survival, rapid dispatch with our dispatcher utilizing TDS, instructing the callers to perform compression-only CPR. They engaged the store employees to perform CPR, and Engine 81 Rescue 39 and successfully restored pulses on this gentleman, and again, and also he was transported to the nearest STEMI Center for emergency percutaneous coronary intervention. Finally, the last incident that of note demonstrates that someone of any age can fall victim to sudden cardiac arrest. It's not just an affliction of the elderly or infirmed. On May the 16th, also, again, Engine 81, they've had a busy month with some outstanding work. And again, Rescue 39 responded to a 16-year-old boy who was playing basketball at a gym who collapsed suddenly. Again, dispatchers using TDS directed the callers to perform compression-only CPR. Engine 81 Rescue 39 provided basic and advanced life support, achieving return to spontaneous circulation on this young man and giving him another chance at life. And that concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, so now we're at presentations.
Good morning, Commissioners.
Good morning.
Chief Mathis, City Attorney Ms. Iniguez, Eric Scott, Captain 2, Public Information Officer. Today we're going to recognize multiple members that were involved in a cardiac arrest save of a 41-year-old man. Now, placing that 911 call was a bystander rescuer, Mr. James Handel. He tried to make it here this morning. Unfortunately, he got caught and wasn't able to get here in time. But he carefully followed instructions and he started to provide hands-only CPR while our members were able to rush to the scene. Now, answering his 911 call was firefighter paramedic Hugo Tadillo at Metro Fire Communications. So Hugo took control of the caller. He calmly and clearly provided life-saving instructions. At this point, we'd like to invite firefighter Tadillo to the podium, please. Now, en route to the incident there with lights and sirens were our skilled members from Engine 39 and Rescue 39. So we'd like to invite up Captain Sean Gath, Engineer Scott Ross, Firefighter Paramedic Garrett Roach, Firefighter Khalil Sanko, and also Firefighter Paramedic Armante Bartolome. Also present at the incident was Firefighter Nicholas Miller, but unable to be here today. But the incident took place on March 30th of this year. It was a typical Sunday morning around 7:30. This 41-year-old man was walking along the street in Van Nuys. He suddenly collapsed, actually began shaking for a short time period, and went into cardiac arrest. So fortunately, that collapse was witnessed, and there was a quick call to 911, and that individual boldly took immediate action, started those chest compressions. Again, our paramedic at Metro Dispatch answering that call provided him exactly what he needed to do for us to have a successful outcome. As 39s arrived on scene, they jumped into action. They moved the patient out of the street, brought him up to the curbside. They provided advanced life support, actually shocked the patient, and that individual was conscious before they had left the scene, and started to transport him to the appropriate medical facility of a STEMI receiving center. But this incident also highlights our tiered dispatch center, or dispatch system, as Dr. Eckstein was mentioning earlier. And the reason is because the call processing time was only 48 seconds. And as I mentioned, when he went down, he actually was shaking for a moment. So when the 911 caller called Metro, it came in as a potential seizure call. When you go back and look at our old system, it would take 2.5, maybe 3 minutes to process a seizure incident type, because there was an abundance of mandatory questions that had to be asked and go through. And so when you're dealing with a cardiac arrest, we all know that seconds count, let alone minutes. So going from 48 seconds down to that time frame compared to 2.5 to 3 minutes is rather significant. So this was a great example of the chain of survival by all members that were involved, along with our tiered dispatch system, that all worked together to save a fairly young man's life of 41 years old. So at this point, we'd like to read one of the certificates. In recognition and sincere gratitude for your heroic courage, diligent efforts, personal initiative, and expedient assistance, which directly resulted in saving a man's life during a cardiac arrest emergency on March 30th, the 14,000 block of Bessemer Street in Van Nuys, the Los Angeles Fire Department commends you for your extraordinary life-saving efforts to a citizen of the city of Los Angeles. Presented this 21st day of May 2019, Ralph Terrazas.
I think this just highlights another example of what our members do every day to make a difference. And because of their efforts, because of the expertise of a dispatcher who recognized this call for what it was, and for the first responders that responded, there's another person that's walking around in LA today that may not have had an opportunity to live past that day. So my congratulations to all of you. Thank you for doing a great job. Appreciate it. I'm going to ask Assistant Chief Calvillo to come to the podium to offer some remarks.
Great.
Good morning, Assistant Chief Carlos Calvillo at Division, Metro Fire Communications Division. Just want to say thank you for being part of this opportunity to recognize these members, and recognizing that Metro Fire Communication is part of emergency operations and all that we do in supporting the citizens of Los Angeles. What was most notable to me listening to this call that firefighter Tadeo did a great job on was it wasn't 2 seconds later he was on another very difficult call with somebody who was difficult to communicate with. And the dispatchers, the call takers at MFC average over 105 calls a day that they take, and he was just right back at it doing another difficult call. So thank you very much for an opportunity for us to recognize him and these other members from 39s, who I'm also an alumni of.
So now with the consent agenda item.
Okay, move the recommendations for items 4A through 4I.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So our first regular agenda item is a report by the department on the update of LAFD youth development programs. It's 5A BFC 19055.
Good morning, Madam President Ibarra, Commissioner Glazer, and Commissioner Hara, Secretary Sella. My name is Battalion Chief Christine Larson of the Firefighter Recruitment Section. Presenting an update on the Board of Youth Fire Development Programs. These programs are a part of the long-term strategy to hire diverse candidates within the City of Los Angeles. One of the main goals of all of the youth programs has been standardization. So we've been working hard to get all these programs standardized so that we can continue to develop youth better throughout the City of Los Angeles. We held a youth expo in January. We had 199 attendees, which 21% were female, which is a big improvement for us. The youth programs consist of 4 different programs. We have the Girls Camp, the Firefighter EMS Magnets, the Youth Fire Program, and the Cadet Program. The last Girls Camp that we had in March, partnered with Councilmember Martinez, had 93 participants, which is our highest number of attendees for any of the girls' camps. The Firefighter Magnets, in partnership with LAUSD, currently have 4 schools. Banning is going to be the first school to graduate a group of kids. It's going to be this Friday at Fire Station 112. We have 24 seniors graduating, of which 8 are women. And 8 of the students have said that they're going to continue on into the fire and EMS arena. So that's a win for us as far as whether they become firefighters with LA City or somewhere else. They all got seniors. All the seniors also got CPR certification. We have Wilson, Dorsey, and Monroe that are also part of the EMS Magnet. We have West Adams coming on in the fall. So some of the things that we still need to work on with the fire magnets is getting the MOU ratified. We're very close to that. We should be doing that within the next few weeks here, and getting the CTE's teachers online for the fall. Currently, we have 328 students, of which 36% are female. And we provide 2 firefighters at each of those schools twice a week to assist the coaches and magnet coordinators with the kids. The Youth Fire Program is an 8-week program, 4 levels of instruction, and it's held twice a year in different parts of the city. Harbor, Metro, ELAC, and the Valley. Currently, we have programs running at Metro and ELAC. This program is our primary pathway to the cadet program, and they give the kids a basic level of introduction to all the skills that benefit them as they transition and become cadets and they're a little bit older. The Harbor completed their academy this spring, and they had 82 participants, 18% female. Metro has 112 participants. Their graduation is going to be this Saturday at Frank Hotchkiss. They have 26% female. ELAC has 33 participants. They're going to graduate June 1st at Frank Hotchkiss, and they have 12% female. And the Valley program, which was last held in the fall and will be again held in the fall, has 32% female. The biggest program that we have is our cadet program, and it's undergone a major revamp. The majority of this is to give a level of standardization, get a task book, get the cadets on point to really standardize all of their training. Our biggest task was reaffiliating with Learning for Life, which has caused us to redo all the applications with the cadets, get the liability going, and increase the level of accountability for the fire department. Currently, we have 15 posts throughout the city. We're hoping to add more. The challenge that we have is the people that run the posts are volunteering their time. So it's hard to get more people to volunteer. Hopefully we can do some kind of incentivization program throughout the department that might encourage more posts throughout the city to benefit all the kids. So we'll have usually 3 post trainings a year. We'll get all the kids registered in the Learning for Life, and then we'll point them out to the cadet post that's closest to their house so that assists them getting to and from. Currently, we have 121 confirmed cadets with an increase in the female cadet population from 12 to 18%. We just had 2 very successful cadet programs that occurred. One of them is CFA. It's California Fire Exploring Academy, and we sent 15 cadets up to Novato, California for a week where they got more advanced level hands-on fire training, rescue scenarios, helicopter operations, brush training, which was valuable for our cadets. And this past weekend, we sent 27 cadets out to Del Val with approximately 300 other cadets throughout the county to, again, get hands-on training to benefit their skills and abilities. We currently have 11 cadets that we've interviewed or in the process of becoming paramedics. We have 2 paramedics that are going to graduate this Friday from paramedic school that we sponsored. And our kind of overall goal is to continue to increase our female youth participation. And we've developed some relationships with LAUSD to help us put that message out through the school system to help gain more support for the youth programs that the fire department offers. And the only thing that we're still kind of missing and that we're working on is the tracking mechanism with ITB to be able to track kids from girls' camp, youth academies, the magnets, and the cadet programs. That's the end of my report, unless you have any questions.
Yeah, great job with all the youth programs. I was wondering about what are the requirements to be a member of the cadet program?
It's just an age requirement,
Mm-hmm.
and then they've got to go through the cadet orientation. So we do 1-day, 10-hour orientation, and we're looking at those kids coming from the LAUSD school district system.
Okay. So they need to be enrolled in LAUSD?
Yes, ma'am.
They need to have residency within the district.
Within the LAUSD school system.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
within
they
the
don't
boundaries.
necessarily have to go to an LAUSD school.
Right. But they need to live in.
Live in the LAUSD, yeah.
Got it. Okay. Great job with this report. You could really see how much it's grown in the last couple of years. So
Absolutely.
congratulations for all of your work and for Commissioner Glazier's work as well, who's put a lot of work into this.
Absolutely.
Yeah, thanks for the report. Really nice report. Making great progress here. Couple of quick questions on the magnet. For the 5th school, do we have the level of staffing to support a 5th school in 2019 at consistent with at least what we're doing right now with the others?
Yes, we do. We have a firefighter that's going to be starting on Monday, so he will be able to attend that 5th school.
And that'll be on the twice a week
Yes, sir.
schedule?
Yes.
Okay. Just, I think for the future, let's not add any more schools
Okay.
until we reach a couple of milestones here. One would be that we get the level of staffing. We hit the level of staffing we want, which is, I think, a firefighter there every day. Is that the goal? One of the goals?
Well, right now we have a firefighter going twice a week.
Mm-hmm.
If we modeled it after LAPD, we would have one there 5 days a week. But at the current staffing level, that wouldn't really leave us enough staff to do the other recruitment pieces and,
Right.
and outreach that we would need. So without an increase in staffing in the unit, we wouldn't be able to do that.
Yes. So okay. So do we believe that our ideal is twice a week, or do we have a different ideal?
Ideal is twice a week. Once we get the CTE teachers in place, I think that's going to take a load off the firefighters. The firefighters are currently teaching a lot of extra things now with that revised curriculum that we've got standardized for each level of education. And the CTE teachers, we should be adequate with the 2 times a week.
Okay. And then just because it is a couple things. Also the EMT prep course. So that's something we've talked about.
Right.
I think before you took over here, but we've talked about this with the group for a while. Where are we on 12th grade? So I see here as a goal.
We haven't been able to get it going yet. We're working on some of the logistics of it, but we haven't completed it yet.
Okay. So yeah, that's. I think it is really important. I think for us to have for this to truly be a linked learning program, that EMT prep course. I mean, I think I was really hoping we'd have an actual EMT certification course, and I know that for a variety of reasons that seems less likely. But the EMT prep course was a kind of the plan B on that. To prep our kids in our schools to be able to really have a path into an EMT, like that's a job they can get right out of high school as soon as they turn 18, and can take that course. So I just want to reiterate that is really important that we continue to push that and try to get that going.
Okay.
As a 12th grade elective for people. Let's. I was to ask 2 things. One is let's not add any more schools until we have that EMT thing figured out.
Sure.
That we know that we have staffing budgeted for it. And I'd also ask that there be an actual board approval process where the proposal for a new magnet would come to this board, and we would actually have an opportunity to understand what the plan is and what the staffing is going to look like, and that we are part of the approval. The same way the LAUSD approves a new magnet, is that the Board of Fire Commissioners has an opportunity to actually affirmatively approve the expansion of the magnet program. So like I said, it is a budget hit, and I want to make sure we're not growing too quickly.
Sure. Absolutely.
And then on the MOU piece, for West Adams, that's an LA's Promise school, right?
Yes.
So they're gonna need their own MOU, I think. Just
Okay.
double check
Okay.
if they're gonna need their own MOU or not, because they do operate as a kind of a district within a district there. It's possible they don't, but just double check that. I think we should have, even if we have an agreement with LA Unified, we should have an agreement with LA's Promise as well.
Okay.
For West Adams, to make sure that leadership is bought into whatever it is we're doing. Is that MOU going to come through as a board report?
I don't believe so. I think it was sent to the chief of staff.
They
But I'm
don't
not
usually
sure.
come here.
The MOUs?
Yeah, they don't. I've never seen them.
Okay. I'm interested for it to be shared with us just to see what's in that MOU.
Okay.
I think we're making great progress here. I think just we're almost there on the magnets there. I think we just want to make sure that that your I'm going to call it a bureau
Section.
section. Thank you. Is not overwhelmed by the additions there without really having the staffing to be successful with whatever it is we're doing.
That in talks with LAUSD, if we were to move forward with adding more magnets, it takes them about 1.5 years to build out a program. So there's plenty of time for us to get this portion of it set before we even entertain something else. So
Is the impetus to add more schools? Is that coming from LAUSD?
that
Or
was
from
coming from the fire chief.
Yeah.
He wanted to add more.
Yeah. I would say that's I'm a fan on this case, particularly of quality over quantity, to make sure that we really have a solid base here before we do any more additions. So again, I would say don't add any more schools or without the. I would ask that it not be done without the approval of the commission.
Absolutely.
And then maybe we can amend the report to include that in there.
Okay.
On the rest of the stuff, I just want to commend the progress you're making on the standardization, on the fire program, and the cadet program, and where that's all going. It's really going in a good direction. So I'm pleased to see how that continues to evolve, and I know you guys are making progress. I also want to just quickly congratulate our own Patricia for her
Civilian Employee of the Year.
as the Civilian Employee of the Year. Unfortunately, I won't be able to make it to the ceremony, but congratulations,
Congrats.
well deserved. And I take all the credit, but Patricia has been. We would not be here without her dedication on the work that we're doing, and I'm so appreciative of the fact that what we've been able to do, just getting the position open, getting her on board, and really the dedication she's shown in really pushing this program forward. So thank you so much for all your hard work on this. You and your team. It's really, we wouldn't be here without it. So
What's her last
thank
name?
you.
Patricia Arias.
Arias.
yes. So congratulations to you and to all the other awardees, but particularly Patricia. So thanks. That's what I've got. All right.
Great. Thank you.
Thank
All
you.
right.
Likewise, actually, I want to
Yeah.
congratulate Patricia as well, and I was very impressed with the ethnic diversity where Hispanic and African American participants make up, the bulk of the outreach that you're doing with the youth.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, move to adopt the recommendation for item 5A. As we adopt the report as amended, with that additional line that additional magnets will be require approval by the Board of Fire Commissioners. All right.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
5B is report by the department on the fast response vehicle and advanced provider response unit update.
Good morning again, everyone. Dr. Mark Eckstein, Medical Director, EMS Bureau Commander.
Good morning.
This is a report on the status of our fast response vehicles and advanced provider response units, also known as our FRVs and APRUs. The first FRV was placed into service 3.5 years ago through funding provided by the Mayor's Innovation Fund. Since that time, as you see in front of you in the report, we currently have 3 FRVs in the field, one serving the downtown area at Fire Station 9, one serving the Watts community at Fire Station 64, and one in the Sylmar area at Fire Station 91. We've gone through several different iterations of staffing these FRVs. Currently, FR9 is staffed by our Tactical EMS or TEMS paramedics, and FR64 and FR91 are variably or V-staffed. We've been fortunate that funding in next fiscal year's budget has provided funding for constant staffing of FR9 and FR64, and we're very grateful and excited about that. FR9 and FR64 are extremely busy. We have changed their criteria for response in our dispatch algorithms, and they're currently running close to 1 response per hour, which is consistent with our busiest resources. Primary missions of the FRVs are to provide timely critical care for our highest acuity patients. They because it's an ALS resource, and they also triage calls and cancel fire companies and paramedic ambulances. When they're dispatched in the CAD, they typically go in lieu of a fire company or heavy apparatus, unless it's the highest acuity call where multiple resources might be necessary. But very commonly, the FRV gets on scene first because they're out and about, not as opposed to being in quarters. So their response times is typically lower than our other emergency apparatus. They provide an immediate assessment and medical care and triage the call to cancel fire companies, cancel paramedic ambulances, and request EMT resources as necessary. The FR9 has greatly helped the downtown community. As you know, Fire Station 9 is our smallest first-in district and one of our busiest, with a high preponderance of serving a homeless population, which now accounts for 17% of our dispatches in Battalion 1. And they provided workload relief for the overtaxed fire companies in that battalion. FR 64, also serving one of our busiest districts in the community of Watts, with a high acuity patient population that's one of our most medically underserved. And also because there's a relative paucity of hospitals in that area of the city and county, the other critical role FR 64 provides, in addition to providing timely medical care, is that triage function and canceling paramedic ambulances, keeping them available, because it's a high likelihood when they transport, they're transporting out of the city to Centinela Hospital in Inglewood or Harbor UCLA in Torrance, and there's also a high likelihood of wall time and prolonged turnaround times. So our metrics are, for FR9, FR 64, very positive. FR 91 is not as busy because of the area it serves, but it's an area that when the engine and rescue 91 are not available because they're on another call, the sheer mileage in that community, the northeast corner of the city, is huge, and response times for BLS and paramedics can be extremely prolonged. So we're pleased with the metrics and of our FRVs. The members are doing a great job on these resources, and we look forward to constant staffing on a 24/7 basis for FR9 and FR 64 next fiscal year. In terms of our advanced provider response units, as you know, this also was a result of a collaboration with primary funding also from the Mayor's Innovation Fund several years ago, beginning in January 2016. This is was a very novel concept at the time. I believe we were only the second provider agency in the country to place advanced providers, which are nurse practitioners or physician assistants in the field. And they have a formidable team working with a seasoned sworn firefighter paramedic. Their missions include treating and releasing low acuity patients, transporting, medically clearing and transporting vulnerable patients to mental health urgent care centers and public inebriates to sobering centers. They also work with super users and also free up many emergency resources in the field. You have the metrics in front of you. AP 58 is proven to be our busiest advanced provider response unit, followed by AP 65. AP 82, you'll note, has worked fewer shifts because currently the advanced provider staffing AP 82 is also our EMS AP supervisor, so that resource frequently has to go NAV for our EMS AP supervisor to perform supervisory administrative work. I am pleased to say that we just completed interviews of the latest group of applicants to fill the vacancies we currently have for EMS AP supervisors. Out of the 9 individuals that we interviewed, we're going to be offering positions to 7. And we reviewed the package yesterday. It's a formidable group of talented individuals, and hopefully they'll accept our job offers. And contemporaneously, I'm hopeful that the CAO will increase the salary of the MSAPs to make us more competitive with the private sector. If indeed these things happen and these individuals accept our offers of employment, we will be able to staff AP 82 on a full-time basis, which is, again, a 410 schedule, and reopen AP 7 and also a second APRU in the Valley, likely to be at Fire Station 78. In addition, one of the EMS APs that we just interviewed, who I'm very confident will accept our offer, will be the first EMS AP who will work with us for our upcoming telemedicine project, or our DART program, which we hope to launch later this calendar year. So in summary, the FRVs and APRUs, really part of our ongoing efforts to be more efficient in addressing the increase and changing dynamic of our EMS call load, leaving heavy apparatus to respond to incidents for which their training and equipment is required in terms of structure fires and so forth, and our paramedics to respond to those calls who truly require advanced life support. And I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
For the APRUs, what are their, so it says there's 69 shifts worked. What does that mean in terms of their work schedule? What does it look like?
Yes, ma'am. So the APRUs, they work a special duty schedule, which is 4 days a week, 10 hours per day.
Oh, so 410 schedule.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. During the last budget hearing that at least the one that I watched, where Chief Terrazas was talking to the budget committee, it sounded like they had a huge interest in both of these programs and seeing them grow. So how do you see this growing and, budget-wise, and also like in what geographic districts?
So it's a great question. We have a multi-pronged approach in terms of our EMS strategy, working closely with the fire chief and the electeds. The APRUs are a critical component of our long-term strategy. So hopefully we'll be able to open, again, two APRUs in the Valley. We got funding for next fiscal year for one on the west side in the Marina Del Rey area and Fire Station 62 on obviously the city side, where there's a growing homeless population there, and also proximity of a mental health urgent care facility just over the city border in Culver City. So our ultimate goal is to have one APRU per battalion. That's our long-term strategy. In addition, we are about to launch our first alternate destination resource next month, which will, for the first time in the history of the department and probably in the state, allow two sworn firefighter paramedics with additional training to be able to medically clear these vulnerable patients with mental health emergencies and public inebriation, and then have an LAFD ambulance transport these people to alternative destinations, sobering centers, and mental health urgent care facilities. And this is a state-approved pilot. If that's successful, we look to expand that concept, and also we look forward to implementing our telemedicine program. So our long-term plan is to augment our FRVs, APRUs, alternative destination resources, and telemedicine program with the ultimate goal is to have fire companies and paramedic ambulances respond where their training and expertise is truly required, particularly for time-critical medical and fire-related emergencies, and for the growing subset of patients who call 911 for non-time-critical medical issues, whether it's chronic medical problems, social issues, substance abuse, psychiatric problems. We're trying to provide the right solution. So 911 has become the catch-all for everything, but we've recognized that sending paramedics and firefighters to these calls is not the best response, and it's a downstream risk where they're not available for those patients who ultimately need them. And I think what also was very compelling is I presented our metrics and these proposals around the country at different medical and EMS conferences, and it's safe to say that many EMS provider agencies around the nation are looking at our programs as a model and want to follow our lead. And we also look forward to applying to a program under the federal government, under the Center for Medicaid and Medicare Services this summer, where there'll be a new reimbursement formula to allow us to bill for these treat-no transports by APRUs and or transport to alternative facilities, which certainly will help us with long-term sustainability with a reimbursement strategy.
Oh, I see. So right now we don't bill because we're not transporting, basically.
That's correct. But the federal government recognizes that having a built-in financial incentive that all all patients are transported to an emergency department not only is financially not feasible, it's not in the best interest of the patients and the community. And we're really on the cutting edge in the country on this, so we look forward to applying to participate in that program. Applications will be this summer, and I believe it will be implemented in January of 2020 in terms of the reimbursement formula.
Great. And then the other question I had is about the partnership we had about the EMS super users. So I'm curious about like the data that we gathered, and I'm wondering if we don't no longer have the partnership because like it wasn't successful, or maybe it was other reasons. I'm curious.
Yeah, so good question. So the EMS super users is an ongoing issue, particularly if they're not housed, if they're homeless. We've had several meetings with LA Homeless Service Authority, Department of Aging, and also some non-governmental agencies. As you may recall, we had an agreement with a nonprofit called Partners in Care last year. They could no longer support us. What we're doing right now is we recognize that the only way to really address our super users is really one patient at a time. That's what the hospitals do. They assign a case manager. So we're applying for grant funding through a private philanthropic organization to hire social workers. And what our plan is, through our data, through electronic patient care reports, we know who our top super users are. We know if they have insurance or if they're insurable through Covered California or the like, or Medicare. And then have our APRUs work with our mobile integrated health unit leadership in the MS Bureau and a social worker to try to help navigate these patients to break their dependence on the 911 system. Because as you correctly alluded to, some of these individuals, they call 911 literally hundreds of times per year. So not only do they tie up our very busy resources, it's also a huge adverse impact on morale when our members are responding to the same individual over and over again, and ultimately they need a long-term care, they need a medical home, they need the social and substance abuse and mental health issues addressed. So we're coming up with a long-term strategy, but right now we don't have the infrastructure to really address that right now, but we're hopeful if we get social workers, that will provide the missing link because it's very, very labor-intensive. But even if we're able to get one super user out of the 911 system as a factor of dependency, that may translate into hundreds fewer responses just for that one patient.
Okay. So we would hire them? The department would?
Well, the plan is if we're successful in getting these grant fundings, yes, ma'am, we would hire the social workers. And I think once we provide proof of concept, ultimately the goal is it would be rolled into our budget because it would be very cost effective in the long run.
Yeah, I agree. Okay.
Thanks for the report. So on a couple questions on the FRV. So if they go to constant staffing, how is that? Are they going to still be patrolling for 24 hours straight, or how will that work?
So certainly no one expects the members to be driving around for 24 hours. So you're correct in what you alluded to. During the day, the expectation is they're out kind of patrolling, as you mentioned. But again, right now, the FRVs are very aggressive with buying into calls and canceling fire companies. Mm-hmm. But as we continue to change their priority in the algorithms in the CAD, they're being dispatched much more frequently. So, for example, the FR9, FR64, the way they are in the CAD right now with 24-hour staffing, they would be running probably well in excess of one call per hour. And so you're correct. It would be unreasonable to expect, or we can't require them to be out and about for 24 hours. But because it's a light non-transporting vehicle and it'll be a rotation through, in that fire station as opposed to two members assigned, we're confident this will be a very valuable resource. And these resources have really been embraced by the members at those stations because they see the value added in terms of their workload, their availability, and the value to that community.
Yeah, how's it going to work, though?
There'll be another rotational resource in that fire station.
So they'll be dispatched from quarters, is all I'm saying. So they'll be actually sleeping at night. I mean, I'm not disagreeing with the idea of going 24 hours. I'm just asking how it's going to work.
Yeah, I mean, after hours, they'll be sleeping like anybody else, and they'll be dispatched.
So they'll be at fire station, like FRV 9 would be at 9s?
That's correct.
In quarters there?
That's correct.
Where are you going to put them?
We're addressing the logistical and operational issues in terms of physical space at station like 9, looking at our options. But again, based on the CAD, even with incorporation of AVL, unless they're physically located in that first-in district, mm-hmm. the fire engine will go ahead if they're located somewhere else like 4s or 17. So they have to be physically located in that first-in to go in lieu of a fire company, which is the goal. Because right now, we want to send 2 individuals in a non-transporting light vehicle, then 4 members in an engine, or 6 on a truck to a homeless individual.
You don't have to convince me the
right.
reason to do it. I think the logistics of it, though, are an interesting challenge, but also an interesting opportunity to rethink how we dispatch in that area there. And interesting, we have a CAD report coming up shortly. But from a response time standpoint, putting FRV 9s of 4s wouldn't change much because of the sort of the distance, particularly at night, on a response from quarters. So I am curious whether or not, with the FRVs moving to a 24-hour shift, if there is an opportunity here for us to start thinking in coordination with our CAD about where we might put them that would still allow them to meet the response needs that you're talking about, but not stack up. I just don't know where they're going to go.
Yeah,
there. So you put them at 4s, they're not that far away. You also start to address the issue of the more resources you put in, the more the phone rings, the more everybody's awake anyways. 64s is a little different. The places, they got some extra space down there. But I think, again, 9s represents this ongoing challenge, and I think the FRV in particular and what you do with it, assuming the budgeting comes through for the 24 hours, I would really strongly encourage you to work with Scott and think about what it would look like to put them in quarters at night, not at 9s.
So, Commissioner, to your point, so actually I've been working closely with Mr. Porter on this and our dispatch team and CAD support group. In our long-term strategy, we're looking at creating dispatch algorithms specific to certain first-ins, including 9s.
Mm-hmm.
But I am mindful and a little bit reticent in the fact that during the day, if I have 2 engines and a light force and a truck in quarters at Fire Station 9, and we get a third-party call for a person down on 7th to San Pedro,
Mm-hmm.
with traffic, it could take 7 to 10 minutes to get there for a cardiac arrest, and I have 3 resources in quarters. So we want to be careful not to have a different standard for that community.
But 9s is patrolling during the day. They're not in quarters. So that's my point, is at nighttime, the traffic changes, and so
you still have traffic down there at night, though.
Yeah.
Sure, but at two look, I mean, we can split hairs all we want to here. The main point here is, if there's nowhere to put them and there's nowhere for them to park their vehicle, we've got to think of something different. And what I'm encouraging you to do is use this as an opportunity to think a little bit differently about how we dispatch in that first in, because loading up more people there, I'm just convinced, isn't the solution. It creates as many problems as it solves. So I'm specifically speaking about the nighttime and what you do at night. During the day, they're not in quarters, in theory, right? They should be out doing their thing. At nighttime, though, the dynamics of the first in change, and there may be different opportunities there. So think about. I'm encouraging you to think about what are some different opportunities you have there to think about where they go and how they're dispatched, and look at the algorithms there, so that we don't continue to stack up resources at 9s, which creates all its own sort of workload issues in the area. That's all I'm saying, is we're moving. It's great that we've got the funding for the 24 shift. I think they should all be 24-hour constant staff, right? So don't mishear me on that, right? I think the FRV is a wonderful concept. It's the right direction to go. They should all be constantly staffed, and we should have 1 in every battalion, 100%. With the addition of the resource, though, I think it offers us an opportunity to think differently about how we respond. And as we start to think about what the future of the department looks like, satellite stations and things like that, right? Again, this is the opportunity right here, because I think everybody in this room knows there's nowhere to put them when you're talking about 9s. So I'll leave it there, but think about it.
Yeah, and we are exploring all options, including using the technology such as AVL into different dispatch approach to that district.
Okay. On the you mentioned wall time. I am curious. I was hoping for a little bit more detailed report on wall time. About, the last time we heard about wall time was probably 5 years ago. We with the advent of our AVL implementation, we should have a fair amount of data now about what wall time looks like and whether or not it is the scourge that it appeared to be several years back. What is the availability of data for us to think about how much time we're spending on the wall right now? For our listening public, that's the time that paramedics are sitting or crews, any crews sitting in a hospital waiting to clear patients.
My response is there's a bit of a caveat there, and we're probably comparing apples to oranges. We've changed the way we collect the data and the business rules for those metrics. We no longer have a 20-minute or 30-minute stopwatch where the resources have to go NAV or unavailable for beds. The paramedics are responsible to complete a transfer of care, finish documentation, and so forth, and they go available. AVL has kept people honest, as it were, in that we know when they leave the hospital. But I would argue the metrics we have are not entirely accurate. So if you look at pre and post AVL, it looks like we went from over 100 hours a day of wall time to almost none, which obviously is impossible. So I would just be a little bit circumspect in putting a lot of credence in the data. But I will defer to FireStat in terms of the latest metrics.
Okay, so just to ask one more time, because I did ask for this specifically last time we were up here. I really would like to see, and we're going off agenda now, and I know our counselor here is going to get antsy in a minute. So I would really like for us to, if the metrics are different now, great, right? Fine. From a department efficiency standpoint, I remain curious about the efficiency of our resources in terms of the transports and where they go. So I'm going to ask that this be agendized for a separate meeting and a separate report. Sometime in the next 90 days that we come back, and it may be something you do jointly with ITB to get the stuff in. Don't worry, we're not going to discuss it. just clarifying what I'm asking for. I'd like to see that separately to really understand. And now that we have the FRV and the APRU in the mix, what is the state of our EMS responses? On the APRU, so if we're not doing the super users, that means we're focused entirely on the low acuity type stuff. Is that right? Is that the main goal then now is, the goals have shifted to be 100% focused on the lower acuity calls. Am I saying that right?
I wouldn't say it's 100%. It's certainly a focus on the low acuity calls that could be safely treated and released on scene to avoid unnecessary ambulance transport to emergency department, and medically clear behavioral health emergencies and inebriates to be transported to alternative destinations.
Got it. So the numbers here are interesting, but I'm actually more interested in how this relates to percentages of what they're doing. And so the treated and released, so roughly, if I got this right, they had 519 incidents and 92 of those resulted in a treat and release? Or is that the number to kind of do the percentage comparison there?
The true denominator there would be patient contacts.
Okay.
They're often canceled by resources on scene prior to arrival.
So roughly 30%?
It varies. It's running between 40 and a little over 50% for the most part, with some variability.
Okay. Are resulting in an actual treat and release?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Presumably that is an avoidance of a significant amount of time spent in transport, and is that?
That's correct.
That's correct. So is that about what you were hoping for?
I think when we saw our pilot, it was running around the same percentages. So, we're always trying to balance. I mean, obviously, patient safety is paramount.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we have enough experience now. It varies a little bit on the patient population in terms of the acuity. And obviously, the older age group is higher risk. So we do 100% retrospective review all these incidents. And we rely on the judgment of our AP and our paramedic team, see if the patient can be safely treated and released. If not, they'll be transported by ambulance, or they request a taxi cab to transport and not tie up our ambulance for the low-level calls. Yeah.
So what I'm really interested in is is the program meeting the expectations that we have set for it, or that you have set for it, frankly, of saying yes, we're getting the kind of level of treatment release that we want to. And again, I don't know what the I'm not telling you what the goal should be.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just curious of if we're meeting the goals, and if we're not meeting the goals, then how do we tweak something so that we do, because the program is very promising, and I'm certainly in favor of expanding the program as well. And I also want to be sure that if we're spending money and resources on it, that it is that we are always continuously thinking about what are the goals of the program, and are we meeting those goals? So the goals have shifted since we started. Right, might be the right thing. Might not. I'm not going to weigh in on whether that's the right or the wrong thing. It just is, right? The goals have shifted. So when you do the reports, it just is helpful that we understand within the context of the goals that you're setting for the program how we are performing against those goals. So when we just get the absolute numbers, it's hard to know if that's good or bad, right? They're just absolute numbers. So you're telling me that they're good, I think. But are they? I mean, are we on track to meet the goals that we're setting?
So there's no set threshold, as it were, because I think that would create a recipe for disaster to have expectations of our crews to possibly push the envelope and treat and release someone, which might be dangerous.
Okay.
I think the low-hanging fruit here is to further inform our members in the field of the availability and capability of these resources, because we still know there's a very, very significant percent of our ambulance transports that are unnecessary, at least medically unnecessary, and a fair percent of these patients could be safely treated and released by the APRU. So part of this is an ongoing education effort by our members. I think that's the low-hanging fruit there, and we're also, again, using technology to try to identify those dispatch codes where the APRUs would be most helpful. And also keep in mind the rate limiting factor is because we have 3 in the field now on a special duty on platoon on 410 schedule, and 1 is not fully staffed. Their ability to navigate through traffic and get on scene in a timely manner. Often the companies on scene just go ahead and have an ambulance transport. So there's some opportunity for improvement, but there is no established percent metric of what the harbinger of success is, because we don't know. We're much more concerned with inappropriate treat and release than the other way around.
Sure.
In terms of patient safety. But we have, I think we are achieving our goals, but is there room for improvement? Absolutely. But I think that's where these other programs come in. And again, it's incumbent on for us to constantly remind our members in the field of these availability and capability of these resources. And it's better to wait for an APRU, even with an extended response time, than to transport a low acuity patient and perhaps hug the wall for a long period of time and not be available in that community.
Okay. The staffing does obviously that's probably one of the primary hindrances for us in terms of actually proving out, like, once and for all, the value here is because if we're only running basically half of our what we have capacity to run. The salaries part of it is also not the schedule still a challenge?
No, you're correct. It's both. The biggest complaint I hear from the members in the field about APRUs is their unavailability. Because of the work rules that we work under. We have a sworn member with a civilian member. They work a special duty schedule, and they go down for the day when EMS calls begin to really spike. So you're correct; they're not available during our busiest call load periods, as well as our worst time in terms of wall time. That's something I don't have a solution for right now. Certainly, all things being equal, I would put these out different hours, which would be more of a swing shift, so they're available for the late afternoon, early evening hours, when we have the peak number of EMS calls citywide on a routine basis. That's unambiguous. So that dichotomy with schedule they work where based on versus our needs is problematic. I would love to be able to get these eventually on a 24-hour schedule and look at the metrics, but right now their limited availability on a 410 schedule is certainly an obstacle.
Right, and the 312 would be a potential solution.
So we have collaborating with labor, and we hope to embark on a trial program just for the sober unit on a modified, it's actually a 313 schedule, and then look at the metrics to see if it's operationally more efficient.
Okay. And then for MFC, you mentioned telemedicine, but the original plan was to actually have a person there to do like a safe no send category. Is that not the plan anymore?
That's correct. We, after a lot of discussion and evaluation. We felt the risk was unacceptably high to have a no-send sight on scene. And the answer, we felt the solution was to incorporate technology, which is telemedicine, to allow a advanced provider or physician to evaluate the patient remotely to safely have the patient disposition to not be transported by ambulance.
So that's different. The idea would be then that we would dispatch a regular paramedic rescue. They'd get on scene and then get on camera with the MFC AP, and then they would make a determination from there.
Correct. The dispatch wouldn't change in its first iteration. What we'd save is the largest time component of an EMS incident, which is transport and turnaround time at the hospital.
Okay.
And that would be avoided based upon a incorporation of telemedicine for advanced provider or physician to evaluate the patient with the video conferencing.
And those are also going to be low acuity, or?
It would be basically based on our patient disposition policy. Patients whose chief complaints or mechanism of injury falls outside of our PDP, our members within that targeted area would then utilize the video conferencing for telemedicine. And the ultimate decision would be the MSAP or physician. If they decide the patient does not need ambulance transport, our resources would be released immediately on scene. And then disposition would be clinic appointment, follow-up, or dispatch of a taxi cab.
Okay. When was the decision made to kind of switch that up?
Probably about a year ago. Both discussion internally with department leadership and also looking at the medical literature, my expertise, and talking to colleagues around the country. The risk was unacceptable in terms of not send someone sight unseen. There's too many unknowns.
Okay. Yeah. It's news to me today that was a change up. So, I think I've been talking about it for last year without anybody letting me know that that's not something we're doing. So that would be just helpful to know when something like that is going to change, because that was certainly an item that we had talked about in the past. Okay. Well, certainly keep us updated on filling the positions, because I know that's remains a challenge for you, and one that is not necessarily fully in your control, or maybe perhaps remotely in your control. But that is one that I think we would love to stay updated on, is how are we getting these things filled. And just I would encourage you, when you do bring the reports back, like I said, the absolute numbers are sort of interesting, but they don't mean very much, because unless they're put in a context of the results of what this is we were able to, save this amount of time or eliminate this amount of all time, or we, eliminated these numbers of transports or things like that. That's, I think it's just helpful for us to understand in the context of, are these units meeting their full potential? Because there's a ton of potential here. I don't think anybody disputes that there's a ton of potential here with these. How do we reach that potential? For the alternative destination, AP 82 transports to downtown. Is that that's their alternative destination?
Currently, Sobering Center or the mental health urgent care by
Exodus.
by County USC.
Okay.
Correct.
Okay. That's it. Thanks.
So I just want to say that there's just a lot of political support for this, and so it's a really great opportunity for growth, and for us to sort of think about new ways that this can grow, and I'm very excited about it. We've been doing this for a long time, and it's finally sort of really taking root, and so great. Thank you.
Get them staffed.
Well, certainly appreciate your support, and we'll provide more granular details as we move forward. And again, we're optimistic we'll be able to fill our vacancies and expand the program.
Great. And
Great.
can I have another report on the super users and what our plans are now that we don't have the partnership, and what resources we might use? That'd be great.
That's a good idea.
Yeah. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very
Thanks.
much.
Good job.
Move to receive and file.
We
Sorry.
have a comment. We have a public comment from Freddie Escobar, president of UFLOC.
Good morning, Honorable President
Morning.
Ibarra, Chief Mathis, Commissioner, City Attorney Iselia, Freddie Escobar, President of United Firefighters of Los Angeles City, representing over 3,200 firefighters, paramedic, dispatchers, and inspectors of our great city. I'm just coming up here to remind Commissioner Glazier, the doctor, that these are meet and confer items. All of these are trial programs that are ongoing, and at one point I felt that we were going into some form of negotiations during your discussions. All these changes that were discussed or ideas need to come to the table. It's just a friendly reminder that these are meet and confer items as we move forward on all these trial programs, because that's what they are right now, trial programs. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We done?
Yeah.
Great. Move to receive file item 5B.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
So 5C is a report by the department on the LAFD Information Technology Bureau quarterly report.
Good morning, Madam President, Commissioners, Chief Mathis, Scott Porter, Chief Information Officer, IT Bureau Commander. I have two reports today. The first one is the ITB quarterly report. It feels like I was just here, so I guess a quarter went by pretty quickly. When I do this, yeah, and the clock hasn't moved, I noticed.
Stopped.
When I do this report, it's particularly difficult, especially in the last year, to decide what to put on it. We have so much activity in the IT Bureau. We have lots of opportunity, lots of things going on. I've highlighted a couple of things. I'm not going to read the report, but I'll just mention a few of them here and then take any questions that you have. Of course, my report always starts with the fact that the IT Bureau's priorities are all set by the fire chief and the strategic plan. So part of what we're doing as a bureau is trying to maintain the constant sort of desire for new things and new programs and new technology. Pretty much everything we do has some technology focus, and balance that against the strategic plan to make sure that we're putting our priorities in the right place. So in terms of computer-aided dispatch, I have my second report is on that, so I'll skip that. We did just complete a 911 phone upgrade. This is particularly exciting because for two reasons, really. One is it's a new phone system, which is great. We also were able to negotiate with the state to pay for 100% of the phone system upgrade, which they were not prepared to do initially, but because of our nature as a secondary PSAP, the calculation of the state really didn't account in their mind for full replacement, but we were able to get that. The other thing that's particularly exciting about that, in addition to some new features that we have at MFC that just make the operation more efficient, is that for the first time come the fall, when PD is done with their phone system upgrade, PD and fire will be on the same phone system. I think I reported this last time, but we're actually done now and it's in place. So that will help us to eliminate pretty much the transfer time. It gives us end-to-end reporting, so we'll be able to report from our end when the caller actually made the call to 911 and how long it stayed over at PD. And then the other piece that's really interesting for next year is this new system that AT&T and Entrado are providing the city give us a lot of flexibility in terms of alternate locations where we can operate and take 911 calls, so we're really looking forward to that. So that went off this month and is doing very well. The radio preventive maintenance program is a big success. We talked about this last time, at least getting it started. So far, we've got 100 heavy and 25 light apparatus through that program. It's just part of the daily maintenance schedule. We get apparatus going down to PiperTech and doing preventive maintenance there. The portable radio replacement project is underway. Since I wrote this report a week or so ago, we've actually trained 1,300 members. That training continues and is on schedule to finish by the summer, where we'll field all the new portable radios. Fire inspection management system, we continue to work on sort of a plan with fire prevention as to what to do for an enterprise fire inspection management system. Our plan right now is to prepare an RFP and release that sometime in the summer for the remaining balance of the Fire Prevention Bureau that needs an enterprise system. As you know, for development services and for the brush clearance, we have a new system that's in place and operating. So the RFP will basically be for the rest of that. Network staffing replacement is on track. We received 11 responses to our RFP. We shortlisted down to 3 vendors. We did interviews and detailed demonstrations about 2 weeks ago, and we'll be shortlisting down to 1 or 2 for the final round of that. It's expected that we'll make a selection sometime in the July timeframe and begin the development of that system. Fire station alerting, the first phase of that project was started last year, and that was to replace the network that goes out to the fire stations to help reduce the number of stations that are offline at any given time. On the existing network, up to 25% or so stations could be actually offline because of the availability of the AT&T circuits. We're working very closely with ITA to upgrade the fire station network. That's about halfway complete. And then the second phase of the project will start sometime in July or August to actually replace the components of the fire station alerting system that integrate with CAD. And then lastly, electronic patient care. We've been working closely with the EMS Bureau to develop an RFP that we plan to release sometime in probably late June, early July to replace the electronic patient care report system. And until that's replaced, we'll likely just continue to renew the contract that we have. So that's the end of this report. If you have any questions about the IT Bureau generally before I move on to CAD. So before I start the CAD report, I just want to recognize 2 members. Is that okay?
Yeah, so we're gonna vote.
Procedurally, we need to adopt the item. Sorry.
Do you want me to sit down?
I mean, maybe. Move to receive and file item 5C.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
So now we're up to 5D.
Oh, thank you.
Report by the department on LAFD computer-aided dispatch.
Excellent.
CAD.
So last time I gave my quarterly report,
Oh, I forgot. We had a comment on 5C, but
Sure.
I believe he's gone. Dr. Tom Williams. So he's gone. All right. So, sorry.
Excellent.
That was the reason for voting.
Okay.
We wore him out. You wore him out, Andrew.
You've done your job. Okay. So on the CAD report, last time I was here doing the quarterly report, Commissioner Glazier asked for a separate report on CAD and sort of the status of CAD. And as I was thinking about and preparing this, I thought I really can't speak about CAD without recognizing 2 members in particular that are really unsung heroes of our CAD system. They're both here today, thankfully. So I just want to take a minute before I get into my report to recognize them here. The first is Captain 2, Tim Morfel. He's technically assigned to the EMS Bureau, but he's our CAD manager. He essentially supports everything related to the business user's perspective of CAD. So not only is he responsible for TDS and managing the TDS program, but he's also responsible for sort of setting the direction and clarifying the requirements of CAD. Captain Morfel has been on the department for 30 years. He's been a paramedic for almost 20 years. He's been a dispatcher for almost 17. He was a dispatch captain at MSC, and he's been in the position that he's in now as a dispatch manager for 4 years. And I just think it's really important. If we're going to talk about CAD, we really have to talk about Captain Morfel and his contributions. The second member is Ms. Stella Baramian. She's an information systems manager too. 2 years ago, she came to us from ITA as part of a reorganization of ITB. All of the resources came here. Actually, Ms. Baramian, 29 years ago, was assigned for a 6-month assignment. She was promised she'd go back to ITA to come to the fire department, and she never left. So she's actually been instrumental in the development of CAD. And today, in our current ITB organization, Ms. Baramian is responsible for all of our software development resources. So anything that we develop custom in-house falls into her shop. And really, without her leadership and her guidance and direction of that team, we would never be anywhere close to where we are. So the things that I'm going to highlight today, and primarily all of the reasons why we're able to do the things we're doing, is largely because of her. So I think it's really important to just recognize that if I'm going to speak about CAD, these are the people that have been with our program really the longest. So again, I'll make some highlights of the report, but I think it's really more for you to ask questions if you have any. As you know, our CAD system has origins going back almost 30 years. It was developed as a custom system on technology that was very modern and robust at the time. It was developed by the Information Technology Agency. I don't even know what it was called at the time, but another city department for the fire department. And for many, many years, those members actually worked for ITA, but they were housed and lived and, sort of assigned permanently to the fire department. There have been several iterations of CAD, but most notably a couple that I've highlighted here where the CAD system infrastructure was, performed. We performed some major upgrades both to the software that it's written in and also to the hardware and infrastructure. And then back in, I think it was 2014, the fire chief had asked for an assessment of CAD because the police department was considering an upgrade of their CAD system. And at the time, there was sort of a question of, does a custom CAD still make sense for the fire department? Should we be just on one joint CAD system for the entire city? PD is going to get a new CAD. Should we just join that? So at the time before I joined the department, when I was with Gartner, I led a group to evaluate that alternative. And I think, I was here before the commission reporting back that for us, it kind of didn't make sense, at least not now. And so the decision was made to stay where we're at. And at that time, because there had been so many questions leading up to, probably 5 or 10 years of should we or shouldn't we move off this CAD, a lot of maintenance and support just wasn't being done. It was just sort of the day-to-day support. But so once we made that decision, we invested quite a bit in the infrastructure of CAD. And then we really started to get aggressive with some of our enhancements to the CAD system, which kind of bring us up to today. In my report, one of the things I do mention is, having a custom system is sort of a double-edged sword. And on the one hand, it's very good for us because operationally, this system really does exactly what we want it to do. We control the resources, we control the pace at which we make changes, we control the order that we make changes, we control a lot about it. And luckily, because of the dedication of the folks that support it, we've designed and developed it in a way that there really hasn't come a challenge to us that we haven't been able to address operationally. When they said they wanted to do AVL, we're doing AVL. When they said they wanted to do advanced mapping, we're doing advanced mapping. When we add new resources and we have different algorithms and we're experimenting with those, we're able to do those. The other edge of that sword, though, is, you sort of have to be careful what you wish for, because you can do all of those things doesn't mean you should do all of those things. So we have to be really careful not to chase enhancements just for the sake of we can do it. So one of the things that we've worked really hard to do, trying to be mindful of the support and the financial sort of responsibility that we have, is put a process in place where these changes go through a very formal governance and decision making. Again, we're driven by the fire chief's priorities. And the fire chief's priorities then move down into all the various bureaus, and in CAD in particular, just because something sounds like a great idea has to be vetted through emergency operations. It has to fit with the priorities of the department. It has to fit with the conflicting priorities in CAD. So that is as much as the technical bits and technical challenges and where we want to see it go. That's as much of the work, I think, for us, is to try to balance that so that we can be making changes at a very good pace. We can address them as they come up, but we don't get ourselves into a situation where we're constantly changing direction and not being as efficient as we can with our resources. So I'll just conclude in sort of talking about what the future is for CAD. The fundamental guts, if you will, of the CAD system in terms of the computer code, the computer language, the infrastructure, and those sort of things, we're very solid and very well positioned for the next couple of years. I think our big enhancements coming up are to continue our evolutions on AVL. Those are as much CAD as they are sort of in the field side, which is the technology that we use to actually, the broadband technology that we use to actually locate the vehicles. So there's a combination there. We have a major CAD enhancement coming up when we do the next iteration of fire station alerting. It's going to give us a lot of capabilities. I know earlier we talked about some of our stations that are larger, that have lots of resources in them. We're very limited on the way that we can alert those stations, and a lot of times we end up waking everybody up just for a particular unit, so the new fire station alerting system will help us with that. Another sort of major enhancement that we have coming up for CAD has to do with how we do location validation and doing more map-based location validation, which our goals there is to decrease the time it takes the dispatcher to actually figure out the location, put in more accurate locations, and then give better situational awareness to both the dispatchers, the floor captains, and also the units in the field. So we have a few very major projects coming up, and then I think it is also important to note that, just because in 2014 we said, this is where we're going to be, every couple of years we still evaluate, is this still the right decision for us in terms of CAD and CAD capabilities. So we'll continue to do that as well. And the last thing I'll mention, just because it was mentioned earlier, is we consider TDS, which is also an in-house developed system, sort of part of that ecosystem of CAD, and we'll continue to support and enhance that. So with that, that's the end of my report. I'll take any questions.
Great.
All right. Thank you for the comprehensive report here. Appreciate the history. I'm sure you're nostalgic for the days of Fortran.
Yes.
So one of the things I remember that was the items that came out of the Gartner report was this idea that we had a really good kernel of a CAD, but that it was really tangled up with a lot of other functionality, like the fire station alerting and other things. How is that going, that disentanglement?
Yeah, I think we take it as we need to. So right now, there aren't any issues. I think the first piece was deciding what are we going to do with fire station alerting. I think when we did that report, that was still a question. That's not so much a question anymore. We have a pretty good idea of what we're going to do with fire station alerting, and exactly there's some components that we're going to separate and some we're going to keep within CAD. TDS is another one. There was a question as to whether or not, is TDS going to stay? Is it going to continue to be our thing? Should we make it a separate thing? Like, for example, if at the time we were doing that study, we said, well, look, if you're going to go to a commercial CAD, but you want to keep TDS, you're going to have to rewrite how TDS works because it's very tightly integrated to CAD. Well, now we know we're going to stay on CAD and we're going to continue to invest in TDS, so that becomes less of an issue. The only reason to separate them now would be because we felt like it, and there's, we don't really have the time or the capacity to do that, so there's no compelling reason to. So I think the answer is we sort of look at those individually, but right now we don't have any where we're like, hey, we got to separate that thing and move it to something commercial.
It seems like the main thing was fire station alerting, which is...
And TDS were the two.
And fire station alerting still is one that, pending funding, that will be gradually pulled out from...
Parts of it will, but the solution that we have right now, so as you know, 2 years ago we got $1 million and we applied that primarily to the network. That's going as planned. Then there was another $4 million MICLA funding that we didn't spend this year, will be carried over into next year. That plan is really to replace some of the back-end components of fire station alerting, the things that are really unsupportable today, but the essence of how we do the alerting will remain largely the same. So we've figured that out now, and we kind of have a plan for that.
Okay, so the long-term plan is now to keep fire station alerting integrated then?
Yeah, it'll be integrated. We're going to just replace the major components of it, so it'll require like a new interface to a new fire station alerting system. but largely the way it functions will remain the same.
Got it. So we'll start to see in the next 5 years a new alerting interface at the station level.
So you'll have the plan that we have today, because of the way the funding came, and I think this actually worked out to our benefit, is that we're going to replace the main components of fire station alerting without changing much of what happens in the fire station.
Got it.
Then in the next phase of that, because the new system will have more capability, we'll be able to start, like in new fire stations, introduce new types of alerting. We'll be able to introduce zoning into existing fire stations, things in existing fire stations we just can't do today with our current system, and that will still be tightly integrated with CAD.
Got it. So like a lot of things is bandwidth, increasing bandwidth,
Yeah,
and
increasing
the ability to
bandwidth is one. The thing that is actually in the fire stations called the station control unit today. I mean, these were built custom for the department 30 years ago. ITA maintains them with a soldering board, at Piper Tech.
Yeah.
When those are replaced, we'll be able to do zoning in fire stations, which we can't do today.
And presumably as you think about components to replace, whether it's within the CAD system, including the fire station alerting, you are looking for more off-the-shelf solutions rather than trying to maintain.
And fire
some of these
station
custom
alerting
things.
is a great example. There are vendors that make certain components that are better bought off the shelf. Station control units, for example, right? We want those off the shelf. We don't want to manufacture them. We want to have parts. We want to have support. But there are parts of our fire station alerting system that we do that are custom that those vendors don't do. Two-way voice into the fire stations. Surprisingly, is something a lot of vendors don't do. We've been doing it for years. We don't want to give it up. So we'll continue to maintain that.
And on the programming side, I know we moved to have a dedicated team from the city as our programming team,
Yeah.
and that are you comfortable we have successfully eliminated the kind of single point of failure aspect of CAD?
Yeah,
that was really our problem in the past.
It has been. It's been our problem not just in CAD, but in a lot of areas. We have it in other areas too.
Sure.
I think in CAD we have it. We don't have it anymore for sure in CAD. We don't have it for TDS. We've totally eliminated in that area. And what's nice about the way we've reorged is all of our custom development is under Stella's shop. So this idea that we don't have single points of failure is sort of now normal for her organization. So if we're doing any custom development work anywhere, we have developers that are cross-trained in that.
Great. Okay, well, good. We've come a long way on this. Thank you for all your work on it.
Yep.
I guess we'll see you on this in another 3 years.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Or another quarter.
Right.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for the report.
Thanks.
Any comments? No. Good.
No comment.
Okay. Move to adopt the recommendation then for item 5D.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
So we had a public comment, but I still believe Dr. Tom Williams is gone, right? So we don't have public comment.
Move to adjourn.
Okay. All in favor? Yes.
Aye.
Second, all in favor? Aye.